slides working? Yes, they are. So I had mentioned that Michael was one of the early guests on Objectively Speaking, but I didn't mention that he was also kind enough to join us for a book club we organized for our students around his book, Apocalypse Never, Why Environmental Alarmism Hurts Us All. So thank you for being so generous.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And by the way, guys, if you haven't read this one, and my parents' personal favorite, San Francisco, highly recommend, and also they're really excellent on Audible. So the fight against censorship is at the core of what motivates you as a journalist. So let's start with this. How sanguine are you about the state of free speech in America in late 2025, but also around the world, and how optimistic or pessimistic are you about the future?
Well, thanks so much for the question, and again, really a pleasure to be here and really wonderful meeting all of you. It's a really lovely event. So I'm extremely worried. I never worried about free speech before 2022. It was only with the Twitter files and seeing the intensive involvement of the intelligence community and their intermediary NGOs, which was what they were doing to try to get around the censorship. That's the main thing to understand, is that Department of Homeland Security was trying to get had empowered these so-called non-governmental organizations to be doing the demands for censorship, and they censored quite a bit of information. I'm worried, I'll tell you the numbers that are most alarming to me. It's the share of college students who say that violence may sometimes be necessary to stop a campus speaker rose from below 20% in the year 2020. It was 34% this year. So that means 1 out of 3 college students thinks that violence may sometimes be necessary to stop a campus speaker. And of course, that's coming in the context of this horrendous political assassination that many of us saw in a very, just a very vivid way, and it was a shocking experience, and I don't really think that we've processed it yet. I've been doing reporting. I have another piece I want to write on it. We have the Attorney General candidate for Virginia was sending text messages to a Republican colleague, and he's competing for the top, so this is the top law enforcement position in Virginia, and he was texting with a Republican colleague and openly fantasizing about his political opponents being murdered. He then went on and was fantasizing about the deaths of their children. This is a kind of, in psychiatry you would call it a personality disorder. It's like an antisocial personality disorder where you have so little empathy for people. So these are the numbers I'm worried about. I will say there is one number that I was also paying a lot of attention to, which is that between 2018 and 2023, the share of Americans who said they supported government censorship of online, it was actually fighting misinformation, but it meant censorship, rose from 40% to 70%, which is also a shocking number. So that's the number of Democrats, I'm not sure what I said. Democrats went from 40 to 70% in favor of online censorship. That number did go down to 58% this year between 2023 and 2025. So I think these numbers, you look at these big changes and we think these numbers are linear, but I think we can push back on it. But I think we have our work cut out for us when you have so many young people that think that violence is an appropriate solution to dealing with people that they disagree with.
Well, it's also that there's a lack of faith in the ability to persuade and to rely on reasoned debate, and whether it's stopping somebody by violence or manipulating people's perceptions with alarmism and exaggeration and half-truths. And I think that brings us to your book, Apocalypse Never. What is the biggest potential harm posed by climate alarmism, in your opinion, and what do we stand to gain by abandoning discourse of fear?
Far and away, the biggest consequence of climate alarmism is the attack on cheap and abundant energy. Germany is in the process of deindustrializing because it shut down its nuclear plants. It, obviously lost its Russian gas. But we're seeing this in the United States. We're adding a lot of weather-dependent renewables that require a significant cost in the form of additional transmission and storage and backup. And then for poor countries, for me, the biggest environmental problem in the world is just frontier agriculture, pushing into forests. That's how you get both species, loss of habitat, species extinction. The solution is industrialization, urbanization to pull the small farmers away from the forest frontier into the cities. That's being threatened by Europe, particularly in places like Africa. I would say the second issue is the anxiety that they provoked. I mean, there's young people that are not having children because they're worried about so-called climate apocalypse. We know that at its peak in 2018, 1 out of 4 children in Britain were having nightmares about climate change. I think it's really, I think you're in a bad way in a civilization when you're creating so much anxiety among young people that they don't want to have children. I mean, you've got some deprogramming in your society that needs to occur.
Although I've heard when you have children that you don't have much time to obsess about the picayune, and you're a little bit focused on what's in front of you, and you figure, you know what, today the world can take care of itself. So you have told me in one of our previous interviews that you've had people say to you, why you, as an environmental activist, climate activist, why are you pushing back against the alarmism? Doesn't the alarmism help? How do you respond, you traitor?
There's certainly a small number of people like Greta Thunberg who I think get a kind of high off of scaring people. It's fun to scare people. You feel powerful doing it. It's sort of a sugar rush. It's not the sort of thing that sustains positive behavior over the long term. It's not the kind of thing that inspires people to take responsibility. People have to have, I think as Jay was saying, you need to have gratitude for and some sense of everything that we've inherited, which is this incredible, beautiful civilization, really the greatest system of government ever invented, an incredible balance of power. I will say some of my own views have changed, as it relates, because I was very far left and have taken my time to kind of moderate. But one of the things that changed for me was that Elon Musk was really proof that the private sector you need to have really powerful people. He was the only person that could have, I think, he was the only person that could have bought X and bought Twitter and changed it. He was so powerful that the deep state, which really exists more than ever, that he was able to stand up to that, and that took. So you have these, freedom. For Gaita Mosca, was describing how freedom is sort of what you get when you have different powers in society in conflict with each other, and that's something I've come to appreciate a lot more, and that's something I think we got from Elon.
So as recently as 2020, congressional Democrats mentioned the Green New Deal over 1,000 times. Now they barely mention it. Yeah. What's happened?
Yeah, this is happening on a whole set of issues, certainly on climate change. If you think it's the end of the world, then why are you not in the streets protesting all of Trump's policies? The response has been incredibly muted. Greta Thunberg has moved on to Palestine, which I think raises some issues about how serious was she about climate change, or was it just, again, a sort of way to get the pleasure of terrorizing children and leading this kind of children's crusade? But we see it on other issues too. I mean, really, most of the Democrats' agenda. I mean, where are the big protests on trans? The Trump administration has done so many things that the left a few years ago said if those things happen, it's trans genocide or it's climate apocalypse. The left is the left has very weak commitments to the things that it claims to be extremely upset about. And I think that now normies can see that in a way that they couldn't see it so recently. I mean, the progressives in my life, a big moment was just being told by the media that Joe Biden was fine, and then being told 24 hours later that he was not fine, he had to step down. That it was reality. There is still reality. There's still a material reality that intrudes. People in Los Angeles, when your homes burn down, reality intrudes. And so we're in this incredibly important moment in history right now. We're in a transition between I think the era that began after World War II has come to an end. We're in a new era. And I think and the internet obviously played a huge role in opening that. But I think that's been just has had a transformational effect on consciousness. And I think the left is being particularly exposed for the hollowness and the lack of integrity behind its, the issues that it said it cared the most about.
Well, as Ayn Rand said, you can evade reality, but you cannot evade the consequences of evading reality. And I think that is part of the dynamic that you're seeing here, where this is supposed to be reality or what we're being told, and now it's something else. And so beginning to perhaps rely on one's own independent judgment rather than on tribal narratives. One of the most controversial parts in Atlas Shrugged was her line, "Brother, you asked for it." It's Rand's way of dramatizing that ideas and political choices have consequences, sometimes disastrous and deadly ones. The issue of California fires are near and dear to my heart, having lost my home in 2007 to arson prompted fires. So I'm wondering, you've had some of the hardest hitting commentary on the fires in Malibu, Palisades, other parts of the city. Many people treat the devastation as if it was unavoidable. Was it? And are people prepared to choose to change course?
I can't answer the second part of the question, but of course it's avoidable. I mean, I think that one of the tricks as a journalist you learn is that every time there's some disaster, there's going to be this initial reaction from particularly the defenders of the status quo to say, oh, it was climate change, or it was something we couldn't prevent. I'm going to teach a course on journalism, and the first thing I'm going to teach is that any disaster, you will find people that were warning of that disaster months beforehand. And sure enough, that was my instinct going into covering the LA fires. And yeah, months beforehand, the Fire Commission of Los Angeles had hearings where the fire chief is, and the unions are there and the workers are there, and they're just pleading for the money to be able to basically repair, all the broken machineries, the fire engines. They needed more staff. There was no pre-deployment of any significance before the LA fires. They were not pre-deploying the airplanes and the helicopters, which they should have been immediately. And again, exactly what you saw. You saw people say, there was a famous essay by a famous Marxist named Mike Davis called "Let Malibu Burn" that came out, I think, like 15 years before the fires. And it's a lot of the climate apocalypse rhetoric too. It comes from this view on the left that civilization is fundamentally unsound and that it's out of harmony with nature, and it's sort of a new God, as we sort of describe in Apocalypse Never. Is it a wake-up call? I'm not sure. I think the thing that's, for me, that I've learned about the left is that to call what it's doing just like an ideology doesn't really describe the ways in which it's a full-blown dream world. And this is an idea from a German political philosopher, Eric Vogel, and he talks about, really in studying totalitarianism and communism, that these are full-blown dream worlds. And what the left is doing when it approves, gender surgeries on children, when it allows a man to compete in a women's swimming course, when it cuts the funding for fire trucks and puts the money into DEI, those are decisions that are being rationalized according to a logic that's in a dream world. And so when you point out that this is not going to work out well in the real world, the people that are in that dream world, they really can't think about it. It really does take reality to intrude. And so for me, this events of the last year underscore the importance of the intrusion of reality and of political change, because at the end of the day, I don't have any confidence that the left, by which I mean the 25 to 30% of the country, of the base of the Democrat Party, I have no confidence that they will snap out of the dream world for any reason, and that the main event is just making sure that they don't have any power. I mean, they need the power to be taken away from them.
And yet, And yet, turning now to your book, San Francisco, Why Progressives Ruin Cities, which two San Franciscans sitting here tonight found very illuminating. We have a new mayor of San Francisco, Daniel Lurie, who defeated his predecessor, London Breed, some of whom thought she was, not particularly of the far left. And he's already instituting moderate changes, common sense changes. So doesn't that suggest that there is an opportunity to choose to change course? And what do you think of the new mayor? Do you think he's read your book?
Yeah, I like the new mayor. I know him. I interviewed him for the book. I'm confident. If he hasn't read it, then I think he knows what's in it. Yeah, we're all pleasantly, my allies and I in San Francisco are all pleasantly surprised by him. He was not the person that my allies who share my views had backed. Many of them had backed London Breed, which I thought was insane because she had proven her incompetence for an over 5-year period. But we're all pleasantly surprised by him. He's on the ground. He's reality-based in that sense. They are moving the open drug scenes around a lot more. I think there's a lot. The chaos isn't there as bad, although Civic Center, BART Station downtown is still pretty terrible. There's been no real increase in psychiatric beds or rehab beds, so there's still a physical part of the response that's missing. I'll tell you the other thing, this is very dark, but I mean, basically about 1 million people died of drug overdose in the United States over the last 10 years. It was 112,000 deaths in the year 2023, and then it was 85,000 deaths in 2024. And most of us think that reduction was just because so many people had already been killed. There just wasn't that many more addicts to die at that point. And so, that is the crazy part of this epidemic is that hopefully the number keeps going down, but it has acted like a traditional epidemic where just so many people will be allowed to die from this completely preventable psychiatric disorder called addiction. That it does seem to be contributing to helping the situation on the streets, but we have a mental health crisis in this country. I mean, and it's behind the people that are addicts on the street. It's behind the guy with the porn habit and the weird sexual habits who ended up killing, we think, alleged killer of Charlie Kirk. We have people that when 1/3 of your students think that it's okay to murder somebody for their views, I think you've got some serious psychopathological problems in the culture. And that's why that's been such a focus of our next book and so much of the work that we're doing is that we have a mental health crisis, and we're not being honest that it's manifesting in political ways.
What is the next book?
The next book is called The Left's War on Reality. And it's an exhausting book. I'm so tired. Can you imagine? It started as a book about sort of medical mistreatment, doing transgender surgeries, euthanasia, addiction, COVID response. And then we realized that really these were problems, they weren't coming from the medical and health establishment. They were coming from the left. They were coming from left-wing ideology. They were coming from the Democrat Party. They were coming from George Soros-funded NGOs. And in fact, his impact, by the way, it's not a conspiracy theory. His impact has been absolutely enormous. So in terms of making a plug for this organization, money really matters. Please give generously to Atlas Society because the Soros Foundation proves, I think, that there's a lot of social forces, but Soros has had a big impact on it. But yeah, we just go through every major left-wing issue across 10 case studies and identify the parts of the left that we view as, frankly, death cults and also psychopathologies.
And you will come on, Objectively Speaking, to talk about it.
What's that?
You will come on, Objectively Speaking.
I would love that. I'd be honored to do that.
All right, we've got less than 2 minutes, and I, of course, saved the best question for last. This is one of the most fascinating conversations I've had in a very long time, and we could go on talking for hours. But I'm well aware that this is all that's standing between this audience and the after party. So I've saved the best for last, and that is, of course, the Twitter files. How did your role come about, and what were you most surprised by in what you uncovered?
I mean, so I think I'm the only person now that is still friends with both Barry Weiss and Tucker Carlson. And as you might imagine, a fair amount of drama, particularly, I mean, it's incredible how many people have negative feelings in one way or the other in those two. But I actually love them both, and I refuse to be bullied out of any of my friendships anymore after that whole woke reign of terror that we had from 2012 to 2024. But it was Barry, and she knew I was in the Bay Area, and we were all watching Matt. He was inside of Twitter. And Barry, who is like the most charismatic person I've ever met, absolutely deserves to run CBS News. I mean, she is everything. Yeah. Yeah, objectivists should be, I think, pretty supportive of Barry. She's so anyway, she brought me in, and then the thing that we just discovered that was so shocking. I mean, she was a very busy woman, so she came in, brought us in, and then I sort of hung out with Matt. And it was then that I was like, like, Matt, are you seeing a lot of emails from the FBI and DHS and other government agencies, which is code for the CIA? And he was like, yeah, Mike, I'm seeing a lot of that too. And that was sort of the beginning of kind of the floor dropping out, where we realized it wasn't just that they were all very radical left, the censors who ran Twitter, but that there were like FBI and intelligence people inside of Twitter running multiple information operations. I mean, it was the former FBI general counsel, who's really the second most powerful person at FBI, Jim Baker, that he very conveniently leaves the FBI to Twitter right as the FBI, we now know, is running a deception operation to convince people that Hunter Biden's laptop was somehow not what it obviously was, which was a record of one of the most extraordinary influence peddling operations that we continue to learn about. A big piece in the New York Times a couple of days ago about another thing we had never heard about. And they ran this very elaborate deception operation to convince people that it was somehow related to the Russians. And that was, for me, that was like the big prize, because you got to see that all of the things that had been part of regime change operations by CIA abroad, starting in 1947 in Italy, that they just turned all those regime change tactics, back against Trump in end of 2015, early 2016. And for me, it was just it was like the curtain opened up and you realize, wow, there's just a secret government, and there's people that are operating, and the deep state is not a conspiracy theory, and it's all kind of here to see, and we would never have been able to see that had Elon Musk not bought Twitter and opened it up to us.
Well, absolutely. As Jay spoke on the theme of gratitude, I think it's a very powerful kind of antidote to resentment and to worry and to fear and to negativity. And so I just want to say, Michael, how very grateful we are that you exist, and that for your wonderful work and all of your contributions to liberty and to giving my parents and I something that we can talk about without disagreeing. So thank you.
Thank you, and congratulations.
Thanks for watching this video. At the Atlas Society, we are engaging 1 billion young minds with the ideas of Ayn Rand. You can help by tapping that subscribe button below, or make a donation right here on YouTube or at atlassociety.org.